welcome to all our listeners. My name is Henrik Palmgren and this is Red Ice Radio. We are going to do a follow-up on the story of the Scottish establishment pedophilia ring here today and talk more about the case of Hollie Greig that you could hear on our program about a week ago from now when we had Hollie's mother Anne and their spokesperson Robert Green with us when we went into detail of the story. And today we have David Icke joining us, who joins us to connect some of the dots surrounding this and other similar cases around the world, and to share his opinion about this horrifying story that we see unfolding now. And again, if you're struggling and still don't know what we're talking about here so far, I urge you to just go back into our archive, click on our program with Anne Greig and Robert Green to download or stream that 2-hour interview that we did with them. That will get you up to speed about this story and what is going on. There's other interviews out on the web as well that you can tune into and obviously read a lot about the story online. DavidIcke.com, as you know, is the website. It's revamped. It's got a facelift. It looks good, by the way. Welcome to the program, David. It's good to have you back again.
Thanks, Henrik. Yeah, I listened to the 2-hour interview with Anne, Greig, and Hollie and Mr. Green, Robert Green. And I thought, you know, what solid people they are, what incredibly determined people they are to not be intimidated and crushed by an establishment network that has sought to do just that over many, many years. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. I've seen 3 very distinct periods since I started all this, 20 years ago this month, by the way. And that is the large number of years when people didn't want to know. And then more recently, since 2001, etc., 2003, I've seen more and more people, vast numbers of people, open their minds to what they wouldn't have done before in terms of looking at the world in a different way and seeing it for what it is and not what they're told it is. And I'm just seeing now the cusp of this third stage where that awareness is starting to impact on events. And what's happened over the horrific story of Hollie Greig is that the Scottish establishment, which is in global terms very, very significant, it's not called the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry for no reason. I've been looking at this for a long time, and Scotland is a major, major centre globally for paedophilia and Satanism, not least connecting into some of the old Scottish aristocratic bloodlines. And what we saw when Robert Green, who wants to stand for Parliament on the single issue of the Hollie Greig case and the way that she has described how she was systematically raped, not just by her father, but by members of the Scottish establishment, including a well-known judge, or sheriff as they call them in Scotland. And when he went up there, as people who listened to the 2-hour show you did will know, but for people that didn't, he was arrested for a breach of the peace. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. All he was going to do was try to get information into the public domain about what had happened to Hollie and the fact that there was no justice going on. And of course, in Scotland, a breach of the peace is interpreted so widely that basically if you upset anybody, they can apply that law. And of course, people were going to be upset by what he did, the people he was exposing, for instance. But where I'm going with this is that this all-powerful Scottish establishment that controls the law offices all around the country, the government and the Scottish Parliament, and this law firm, Levy and McRae, that has so much influence and power in Scotland, both in the government law offices, and among the mainstream media. But because 2 things didn't happen. One, or 2 things did happen, a better way of putting it. One, Robert Green and people who have followed up with the story since then had their facts right. And 2, they weren't intimidated, and the people that have picked the story up since it broke have not been intimidated by threats of legal action and all this stuff. And when you bring those 2 things together, you are informed, and what you're saying can be supported by the evidence. And 2, you will not be intimidated by threats from law firms or governments or anything else or police not to do what you know is right, which is to communicate that information then there's a massive shift in the power, because this Scottish establishment is in a very, very vulnerable position, powerful as it thought it was, for a simple reason. What Hollie Greig is saying is true. If it wasn't true, then it would be a completely different scenario and dynamic. But because it is, it means that as long as we keep speaking the truth and won't be intimidated, what are they going to do? Where are they going to go with this? And what has happened since they made the major press the panic button error of arresting this guy and bringing it to the surface is that, of course, as you've seen, Henrik, it's going out all over the world now. I mean, we're talking about it in your show here tonight, and of course you did the other day. And it's starting to become a very, very significantly known story that's expanding all the time. And it just shows you, I just really want to get this across to people. Get your facts right, speak your truth without being intimidated, and there's a dynamic change of where the power lays. And this has been a wonderful example of that, and we need to keep going in that direction with this, because this has the potential, because as we'll discuss today, where it goes and where it connects into, this has the potential to bring down Scottish governments, even British governments, if we can get this out to a wide enough audience.
Do you think there was a big mistake of them, from their point of view, to arrest Robert Greene? And do you think that that's also why some of the reasons why they haven't attacked people on a legal front, because they don't want to actually drag this thing into court, because that's the potential worst thing they could do, maybe?
That is the worst thing they can do. And this is why I come back to my point a few minutes ago, Henrik. As long as you get your facts right and what you're saying is true, then, okay, let's go to court. And let's get the whole thing out in the open, in a public arena. So they obviously don't want that. But when you have as much to hide as the Scottish establishment has in all its forms, that part of the Scottish establishment, massively significant part that connects into this satanic paedophile ring, which again is in Scotland, with the way we're talking about it, but these rings connect into other rings, and they go out into the British Parliament, they go out into America and countries all across the world. And so they have so much to hide. And what they did, why? Because of the tenacity of Anne Greig and Hollie Greig, and the tenacity of Robert Greene to pursue this case without fear of the consequences. They were forced into a situation where they did press the panic button. We've got to shut this guy up. And of course, in trying to shut him up, they did the opposite. I mean, they might have put a gagging order on him over certain aspects of this story, but everyone else is saying it anyway. We have the power if we bring these two things together, truth and no intimidation.
So if we're talking a bit about who you think is behind this, if it's a small faction within the Scottish establishment, as you say, we can get into later how it connects with various other groups around the world and so forth. But Anne mentioned something interesting, I think, in passing mostly. She said that there was a Masonic cover-up, but she didn't really want to go into it further. And Robert didn't either kind of elaborate further on it at this point, at least. They just said, we just think it's a collection of, men that have these atrocities, so to speak, in common, and not to the fact that they are, Masons or whatever. Do you think that is the case, or could the cover-up potentially be formed or being allowed by an underground network here in some way? Maybe not Masonic necessarily, but some other kind of secret society. What do you think, David?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I talk about something that I call the cement. You've got all these different people operating in politics and law and business and banking and media and all the rest of it. You've got all these strands in this web, and there is cement that holds this stuff together and holds these people together. And a very, very large part of this cement is pedophilia, Satanism, and secret societies. And those three networks connect It doesn't mean that every Freemason is a pedophile and a Satanist. It doesn't mean every Satanist and pedophile is a Freemason.
Sure.
No, but at very, very deep levels within these rings, they do connect. And the significant people involved are Freemasons or members of even more, elite secret societies. They are Satanists and they are pedophiles. And that's the level where the ring and the major players in the ring operate. And you can see in the Scottish example, the blueprint. There is a blueprint that comes up whenever I investigate this anywhere in the world, because after 2 decades of doing this, I've seen and brought to the surface so many different things, and I've researched so many different things. And of course, when I set out in 1990, consciously doing this, I was in for some shocks along the way. But the biggest, I would say, is not that pedophilia, Satanism, and this whole secret society thing is happening, particularly pedophilia and Satanism, but the scale of it and how fundamental it is to those who are running the world in terms of the banking, business, government, or all the rest of it, military, is absolutely, not anymore, but has been absolutely staggering to me to see the scale of it. And whenever I've picked up a major player, someone who's turned out to be a major player, and pursued the dominoes of uncovering the background to them, pedophilia and Satanism come up over and over and over and over again. And I'm talking some of the most famous people in the world who've been presidents and prime ministers and all the rest of it. And there is a blueprint. First of all, what they do is they manipulate events so that they control in any situation. For instance, the Franklin cover-up in America is a famous example of this. John DeCamp, a former state senator in Nebraska, uncovered a banking fraud with the Franklin Savings and Loans operation involving a guy called Lawrence King, who was a major Republican and sang the national anthem at the Republican conventions in 1984 and 1988. But he was doing more than singing for them. It turns out, as DeCamp got deeper and went beyond the financial fraud for which King was jailed, and found that King was running a pedophile ring in Nebraska and wider across America that was supplying children for sex to the major politicians in America and would do so during these Republican conventions. What he then found, DeCamp, is that this pedophile ring involved the people that controlled the local media, radio and newspapers, the people that controlled the police, major politicians that controlled policy and political policy, government policy in that area, et cetera, and also how it panned out to include other people that were, shall we say, very, very well known in America, and still are in historical terms. But so you find this in the blueprint. They cover all bases. They cover the coroner's office. They have their own doctors. They have their own pathologists, which means that they cover all bases in terms of procuring children. They cover. They have their people majorly in social services and children's hostels and places where orphanages and stuff.
Yes.
And so they cover all bases, which include procuring the children, sexually abusing and satanically sacrificing the children, and then covering the whole thing up because they control all these different aspects of the establishment in terms of doctors and coroners and courts and judges and politicians, etc. What you then find in the blueprint is whenever any genuine media come in to try to uncover and expose what's going on, suddenly, bang, a big wall goes up. And we saw this with the Franklin cover-up involving Lawrence King, when a Yorkshire television documentary, which Yorkshire Television in Britain, which was supposed to go out on the Discovery Channel, was pulled at the very last minute.
Yes.
Which and all copies were they were told to be destroyed. Well, at least one wasn't, and you can see it on the internet. So when we take this to the Hollie Greig situation, Henrik, we see exactly the same blueprint, because it's like rings within rings within rings, and you've got the global ring, but and that operates in the same way as all the individual rings in the different countries and regions operate. So with Hollie Greig, you had the people doing it to her were establishment people, including this sheriff that she talks about. Then you have the wall going up, where the Procurator Fiscal in that region of Grampian, around a city called Aberdeen, a lady called Eilish Angeloni, she refused to pursue the case when she was there, and then she was given the job of being the top law officer in Scotland, the so-called Lord Advocate, and she stopped it at that level as well. You then had the police who, in the Grampian region, Aberdeen, who would not investigate the case. And when they were forced into some kind of investigation, they made sure it went nowhere. And interestingly, the guy McCracker, who's the chief constable, the head of the police in Grampian, who refused to pursue this case, and his police force refused to pursue this case, and the very same chief constable whose police arrested Robert Greene for trying to expose what had happened in terms of child abuse to Hollie Greig, this man, McCracker, the chief constable, is chairman of the North East Scotland Child Protection Committee. I mean, there would seem to be a massive contradiction there, but when you've investigated this stuff all over the world, you might think, well, maybe there's another explanation, you know. Maybe people can work out that there could be another explanation for that apparent contradiction. I've worked it out, and I don't think it's terribly difficult. But then the BBC, going back to Yorkshire Television and the Franklin case with the Discovery Channel, the BBC then come in, and a genuine reporter, in fact about three, I think, started putting this documentary together to expose what had happened to Hollie Greig, and told Robert Greene, we have found more evidence of paedophilia, establishment paedophilia in Scotland. Well, there's plenty of it to be found. And then what happens? The reporter calls and said, it's all been dropped because we've all been threatened, and if we go any further with it, then we're all going to be sacked. Now, this blueprint is so obvious wherever you go, and the wall goes up. And there's another thing that comes up again and again, and that's people dying very strange deaths, who know things about the ring and could be very, very dangerous in terms of exposing it. And of course, Hollie Greig's uncle, who was known as Roy, he was clearly murdered after finding Hollie being raped by her father. And the police said he died of smoke inhalation, when after years and years of trying, there was no investigation. After years and years of trying and pressing, eventually Anne Greig and Robert Greene get hold of the post-mortem, and they find that, no, he didn't die of smoke inhalation, and he didn't die in the fire that he was found in the car. He was clearly heavily attacked with something, a very heavy instrument, probably, I think it says, something like a pickaxe handle. He had his breastbone broken. He was smashed around the head, and he was clearly murdered and then thrown into a blazing car. And it's so, when you see the evidence in the post-mortem, it is so blatantly obvious that he's been murdered. The question then comes, why has McCracker's police force, McCracker's here now, he wasn't here when that happened, I think it was 1997, but why isn't that police force looking at this and seeing it for what it blatantly is? Why? Because there is a massive, massive cover-up going on. And a common theme that I've come up with when I've been going into this story is Edinburgh University, and particularly the law department at Edinburgh University, which keeps coming up. One of the major aspects of this ring in Scotland is that it was involved with Thomas Hamilton. Thomas Hamilton was a Freemasonic paedophile and procurer of children for the elite establishment politicians, etc., in Scotland, who one day in 1996 walked into Dunblane Primary School with, I think it was 4 guns, and killed 16 children and a teacher. Now, there was an so-called investigation into that, which was clearly a massive cover-up, and it was headed by a man called Lord Cullen. Lord Cullen, he studied law at Edinburgh University Law Department. Now, just after this inquiry had made its cover-up, and had closed documents relating to the case for 100 years. What? A man called Lord Burton, a former Grand Master of Scottish Freemasonry, because like I say, they're not all involved in this whole thing, Freemasons. There's a lot of people in Freemasonry, the vast majority, I would say, have no idea this is going on. Anyway, Lord Burton came out in a national newspaper and said that there was a massive cover-up going on involving the suppression of information about Thomas Hamilton and what really happened in the Dunblane killings, and who Hamilton was connected to. And Lord Burton said it involves a elite, what was described as a super Masonic group called the Speculative Society, which was based at Edinburgh University Law Department. Lord Cullen, who oversaw the inquiry into Dunblane, was, and probably still is, a member of the Speculative Society. Then you look at the other aspect of this. The families in the Dunblane inquiry of the children were represented by a guy called Peter Watson of a law firm called Levy and McRae. Lord Cullen also oversaw another inquiry, something called the Piper Alpha inquiry, which was a disaster involving an oil rig in the North Sea. And the man who represented the families in that was Peter Watson of Levy and McRae, their major litigator, head of litigation, I think. And the Lockerbie bombing, which brought down the plane in 1988, a man represented the families of the victims of that, and he was called Peter Watson of Levy and McRae, and Peter Watson studied law at Edinburgh University. When people started in the last few weeks exposing the Hollie Greig story after the arrest of Robert Greene, letters started going out warning them of legal consequences from Levy and McRae and a man called Peter Watson. Lord Cullen was also involved in the Lockerbie situation, where a Libyan called al-Makrahi was wrongly jailed for what was actually a bomb planted by British, American, and almost certainly Israeli intelligence, the Mossad. And Lord Cullen was involved in overseeing the first appeal against the sentence by al-Makrahi. Now, the Lockerbie situation locks in to all that we've talked about here, because al-Makrahi was sentenced to imprisonment in Scotland because they had to have a patsy to cover up the fact that it was done by these intelligence operations, military intelligence operations. And he was completely and utterly stitched up. The evidence was fabricated, the whole shebang. Now, when he had his first appeal, the one that was overseen by this Lord Cullen guy of the Speculative Society at Edinburgh University, it was turned down. But his lawyers pursued it further, and they won the right to a second appeal. Now, this second appeal was going to be very, very different, because evidence had come to light, and these lawyers were going to reveal it, of how evidence was planted. People were offered vast amounts of money to lie to the court to get the Libyan jailed and convicted. And this appeal was due to be heard in 2009. Suddenly, you'll remember this, many people listening to this program will remember this, it's announced that this al-Makrahi is going to be released on compassionate grounds because he has weeks to live, because I think it was prostate cancer. And part of the deal was that when he's released, he drops his appeal, which he could have continued with, even though he was released on compassionate grounds. Al-Makrahi is still alive as we speak, and he was released in August, I think it was August 2009, with weeks to live, quote. And the man who decided to release him was a man called Kenny MacAskill, the Justice Minister in Scotland, the Scottish government, and I put justice in quotes there because it's purely coincidental. And Kenny MacAskill is a former lawyer with Levy and McRae, an associate of Peter Watson, who is also refusing to deal with the Hollie Greig case. And according to some reports, his reaction to this stuff coming out through the internet of the Hollie Greig abuse and the wider story was to add additions to legislation currently passing through the Scottish Parliament, kind of under the guise of stopping stalking of people on the internet. And it's clearly designed to stop information being and people being exposed on the internet when the authorities refused to investigate a case. And so what you had, if you remember, you had Barack Obama coming out at the time that al-Makrahi was released, saying this is outrageous, the Scottish government have made a mistake. Was it the best part of 200 Americans were killed in Lockerbie? It was all nonsense. It was all for public consumption. It was all designed to get the guy out of jail, out of Scotland, on the agreement that he wouldn't pursue his appeal, which was going to demolish the official story of Lockerbie. So you see all these things coming together. And this is how these rings operate, Henrik. They appear on the surface to be one thing, like they're into Satanism or they're into pedophilia or whatever, but it pans out to fundamentally influence and affect everyday society and the government of countries.
It's absolutely shocking, you know, and these connections are so obvious, you know. And I'm also thinking back to, because you mentioned before other cases as well. I'm thinking about the Jersey child abuse investigation in 2008 at the youth hostel there. Do you think it connects with that as well?
Oh, yes. I mean, again, Henrik, Jersey, blueprint.
Yeah.
It comes out, the man who picked up the case, the policeman, who appears to have been a genuine man and wanted to uncover it, he found himself stopped at every turn. He was then subjected to tremendous pressure and attempts to discredit him and undermine the investigation. In fact, he eventually was taken off the case. The media would not cover it as it should have been covered, and then eventually it's all, covered up. Then you go to Belgium and the paedophile murder satanic ring there that came to light.
The Dutroux, Mark Dutroux?
Yeah, him.
Yes.
He was just a front man for the elite and the law and the judges and the politicians and stuff in Belgium. And not only in Belgium, of course, because you've got the European Parliament and you've got NATO. That all comes into it. That's why, that was such a major ring, because it involved all of those people. And what happens, a genuine policeman or an investigator comes forward, starts to make headway, says that he's going to name people, and suddenly he's discredited and thrown off the case, and the whole thing is covered up. People who were abused by these elite pedophiles and Satanists, they come out, they're discredited. Not in truth, but in the public mind in many cases, because the media then turn on them. Instead of looking at what they're saying, it turns on them to discredit them and therefore their evidence. The wall again goes up. It's all over the place. And what you've got in Britain, it's the same everywhere else, but what you've got in Britain is the Scottish ring goes right into the heart of the British government in London and the British Parliament. There's all this stuff about we must check people, and parents can't just take a friend of their child to a sporting event without being checked over to see if they're a paedophile, and all that Orwellian stuff that's being justified by we must stop paedophiles. All you've got to do to stop the major paedophilia rings is go to the British Parliament, go to the Scottish Parliament, go to Capitol Hill. That's where you'll find them. And there is a tremendous potential now, as long as we keep to those two things, get your facts right, don't be intimidated, to actually bring some of these people crashing down and the whole house of cards. Because once you remove the cement, which are these rings, and the lack of knowledge of the rings and how they operate, then the cement goes, the house comes down.
Absolutely. So how do you think this comes into place? This is an interesting question, I think, in terms of how people come into the system, because we have new politicians coming on board, so to speak, all the time, and they seem to get involved in the same old recurring story. Now, do you think it's basically down to the idea of the cycle of abuse that these people might have been subjected at some point in their life and they're carrying it on, so to speak, or is there some kind of blackmail scenario that goes on here, which says that in order for you to come to a certain level within this political party or this corporation or what have you, you have to do certain things in order to attain that level, so to speak, by those who are controlling it. You have to, we're going to videotape you when you're snorting coke and involved in these atrocious acts, or how do you think it arises, and why doesn't more people that are potentially within that system then saying, no way, I'm not doing that, back out and actually tell the world about it, so to speak? What do you think, David?
Well, I'll tell you what is staggering and outrageous and beyond belief is that vast numbers of politicians in Britain and Scotland have been approached by people as a result of this Hollie Greig case coming to light, demanding action, and the silence has been bloody deafening. They will not touch this.
Do you think it's because they don't believe them? They said, no, it's too... are you talking, about that it's connected to all these bigger levels? No way, and they just don't believe them, maybe?
There's some who are so ignorant of the world who don't believe them.
Yeah.
And there are many, many, many who know, either because they're involved or they know the people who are behind it and they're frightened to death of them, who just will not touch it. You just don't go there. And I know that a well-known British journalist who has written some good stuff in relation to things like the lie of global warming and stuff like that, was approached by a friend of his to talk about this and pursue this case of Hollie, Greig, and write about it. And the reaction was basically, it's too hot to handle.
It's not Christopher Booker, is it?
Oh, well, that's what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not having a go at him because he's done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
and he deserves a real pat on the back because he's written some brilliant stuff about the climate change scam and some brilliant stuff about the European Union.
Yes, absolutely.
But this is an area that he won't touch, and that says something about the way that these rings operate, because they can, because of their power in terms of, for instance, controlling and owning the media and what have you, and owning people in the media in significant positions, they can just destroy someone's political career, they can destroy their journalistic career, they can destroy whatever they're doing, as long as they're within the system in some form. But there are people who are involved in these rings knowingly, because that's what they are. They're pedophiles and Satanists, and they come from pedophile, Satanist, intergenerational families. And there are others that were drawn into it because you use the word, but we use the word, but the theme of blackmail.
Yeah.
Blackmailing politicians to do what you tell them to do and introduce legislation you tell them to introduce, because if you don't, then this is going in the post. And you may have come across this document that came to light early in this year in Australia, which purports to be a deathbed, quote, confession of a major Satanist in Australia. And it's quite a long document. And it's not so much a confession, because he still seems to support it in so many ways. But he does reveal how these rings operate and how fundamental they are to manipulating global politics and the system in general, the control system in general, how they are, as I call it, the cement of the control system. And I can't verify that this document is genuine. What I can verify after 2 decades of investigating this is that what he says in that document in detail is absolutely the way it works. And I've got a quote here. This is what he says in part of the document. That's absolutely spot on, given, what we're talking about here now. He says this: politicians are introduced by a carefully graded set of criteria and situations that enable them to accept that their victims will be, quote, our little secret. Young children sexually molested and physically abused by politicians worldwide are quickly used as sacrifices. In Australia, the bodies are hardly ever discovered, for Australia is still a wilderness. And staggering as it may seem to people who are new to this, listening to this program, where they don't have a wilderness in places like Britain and more densely populated countries, they control the crematoria, or some of them. And they get rid of their sacrificed and dead bodies through that system. And so there are so many politicians who are simply puppets introducing and saying what they're told to say, because if they don't, our little secret will come out. And if people go to my website, they'll see that there's a link there to an article which is naming the current British Prime Minister Gordon Brown in relation to this.
Right, yeah.
So when I've, like I said earlier, investigated these people, invariably Satanism and child abuse will come out in at least most of them. I mean, I've been naming a guy since 1998. He's dead now, but he was alive for a long, long time after I started naming him, called Ted Heath.
Yes.
Ted Heath was the Prime Minister of Britain from 70 to 74, and the man who signed us into the fly trap called the European Union, the EEC as it was then. And I was coming across child victims of him all those years ago, 1998 and before. And I named him in a book called The Biggest Secret. And when it came out, a journalist called him and said, this guy, Icke, is calling you a child killer and child abuser. And all he said was, I think Icke must be crazy, or Icke must be mad. And that was the end of it. Why? Because it was true. And in more recent times, I've come across other people who've given me even more detail about that guy. I've been naming Father George Bush since about 96 as a serial pedophile and child killer. I've talked on American radio about it. I've written it in book after book after book after book. I've got it on my website in an article called Paedophilia and Satanism, the Fabric of the Web. And that's what we have to do. We have to be sure of our facts, because we don't want to defame anybody. We don't want to say things about people that aren't true.
Sure.
Absolutely, the last thing we need to do. I mean, the media is doing that all the time. Why should we be doing that? You know, the opposite.
That's right.
But when we're sure of our facts, we need to start speaking out here and naming these people without fear of the consequences. Because the consequences of not exposing these people are that more and more and more children are going to be abused, like Hollie Greig. They're going to be sacrificed. They're going to be tortured. They're going to go through the horrific treatment that they go through. And enough is enough. We're not having it anymore.
Yeah.
I've had a belly full of these people doing this to these kids all over the world. And we've got to get our backsides disconnected from the sofa and start running at this.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And by the way, for those who are not familiar with the Nebraska story, John DeCamp, the cover-up that you mentioned before, David, basically just go to Google Video or Google and type in "Conspiracy of Silence," and you have the documentary right there. It's about an hour long. It's really good, and it details this story and this case in detail, as it were. But David, I want to ask you a little bit about something that seems to be the discussion. If you read some of the comments on the show that we did then with Robert and Anne, and they say a little bit, alluding to just basically that these monsters who are doing these atrocities aren't human monsters. It goes beyond that. What do you think? What do you make of that, David?
100%. You know, depends what level of this we want to talk about at any point. You know, what we've been talking about up to this point in the program is the fact that there are pedophiles and Satanists who sacrifice and abuse children, right? But it goes much wider than that, because these people are possessed. The Satanism and the satanic rituals that they go through, and the secret society rituals too, although most Freemasons don't know it, are designed to create vibrational connections between the people involved and these demonic entities. I would say overwhelmingly take a reptilian form, but not only. And the idea is for these demonic entities operating just outside of visible light to possess the pedophile, the Satanists, and take over their mental and emotional, what passes for their emotional processes. And what these demonic entities are is totally and utterly devoid of empathy. They do not have the power to empathize with the consequences for the others of their actions. We talk about cold-blooded. Well, you know, reptiles are cold-blooded, and these people are cold-blooded. And so what they do, and what we're looking at overwhelmingly with these people, their hybrid bloodlines have been specifically bred to be much more genetically connected to the possessing entity, therefore vibrationally connected. And what these entities do is they feed off human energy, and they particularly want the energy of children before puberty, because there is an energetic and chemical change, quite obviously, that happens at puberty, and they want the energy before that happens. And this is why when you look at all these ancient accounts and ancient stories and legends, they talk about sacrificing young virgins to the gods. Now, these entities are perceived as the gods, these demonic entities. And the young virgin thing is actually just a symbol for children. That's what the young virgins were, and are children, because they want this prepubescent energy. So what happens is if you like, and I hesitate to use the word because it's hardly appropriate, the human level of these people is stimulated to desire sex with children and to desire to harm children and get a big kick out of it. Ted Heath did. I mean, I wouldn't even begin to go into what this guy did, but all the others are the same, but he was a really extreme version of it. Anyway, what's happening is, while the children are being abused, while the pedophile is having sex with them, and even I found this, that even when it's girls, often it's anal sex that these people have with them, they are connecting into, on the energetic level, the base chakra, the base vortex of their human energy field. And what they're doing is the demonic entity is then, through the conduit of the, quote, human level, they are sucking the life force, the prepubescent pure energy out of the child into themselves. They're vampiring the child's energy and fundamentally destabilizing them energetically and therefore mentally and emotionally. That's what's going on at a deeper level.
Do you think that it means that all people who are involved, if we specifically talk about the Hollie case again, have these non-human traits, or do you think that some people of these in these scenarios are human as well, but they just might be attracted to the, who knows, the power? There could even be drugs involved there, or who knows how the setting is, so to speak, there. But generally, do you think it's all non-human, or is it a potential mix, so to speak, here we're looking at?
Well, I think when you're dealing in all possibility, then it's never only one thing. It's never only this. It's never all that.
Yeah.
So you will have people who just get attracted to it for some reason. But the major players are these possessed people. And what do you need, Henrik, to abuse a child, to rape a Down syndrome girl like Hollie Greig, to rape little children and frighten them to death, to torture them and get a kick out of it? What do you need? You need an absolutely deleted ability to empathize. You have no power, connection to feel what you're doing to someone else. You're just completely and utterly cold. Now, this starts to explain other things, from a wider point of view. This is how it's possible for these people, like Blair and Bush, to send the boys in to pepper bomb Baghdad from the sky, to use depleted uranium in the weapons that create horrific birth defects that take the breath away when you see them in Iraq now. That lead to millions of people being either killed or maimed or having their lives destroyed forever in this life anyway. This is the mentality. These are the possessed people that are pepper bombing the Gaza Strip using phosphorus weapons that burn people alive. These are the people orchestrating 9/11. So that 3,000 people die to justify killing even more in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is the mentality. And, I've been saying for years to people, do not, please, if you want to know what's going on, do not judge what these people would do by what you would do, because they're not like you.
Right.
You say they'd never do that. No, you would never do that. They do, and they do it all the time. So because they have this lack of empathy in any way, shape, or form, they can orchestrate the world to cause mayhem. They want to cause mayhem. That's the aim. They want to cause suffering. They want to cause suffering in the child and the children that they abuse and sacrifice and torture because they get a kick out of it. They want mayhem in the world in general by manipulating the banking and economic system and wars and suffering of various kinds. They want that because they get a collective kick out of that. They want the mayhem. It's not a mistake. Oh, look what they've done now. How silly. Look what's happened now. They wanted it to happen. And by understanding the mentality that we're dealing with, sheer, bloody, unadulterated evil, which appropriately is life, written backwards, that's what we're dealing with. That's why we have the world that we have today. And that's why we've got to grow up, wake up, get the bum off the sofa, get the I'm just little me, what can I do, out of your bloody mind, and let's start sorting this, because we've got to grow up and be adult and start to address this, because the consequences of not doing so in the not too distant future will be potentially horrific if we don't. But people are beginning to, and that's magnificent news.
Absolutely, and hopefully there are a lot of people joining, in both Hollie, Anne and Robert as well. I know that they have a lot of events coming up, primarily now around UK, but it seems to me then that these cases are blooming up, so to speak, in various parts of the world at different times. It's almost like there is always one place in the world where it's currently being a little bit exposed, if you know what I mean. It's been in Portugal before, in Belgium, as you mentioned before. It's been up here in Sweden back in the 70s. It's bloomed up a year or so ago. It's been in Mexico, if I didn't mention that before. America, obviously, as you say. But it never takes root, so to speak. It never really blooms, and the major connections are made. They're made by people like you, of course, and people who are following your work, and other researchers who can figure this stuff out. But the trick here, so to speak, the difficult part, what we're faced with, is to get the dots connected for the people who are also coming to it for just running across this in the alternative media, or eventually, hopefully, down the road in the regular media as well. And begin to connect all these dots, because that's essential as well in this place, because otherwise it's just another little incident that just, oh shit, that was not good, happened up in Scotland, but I guess it's over now, and then we're back to sleep again, and that's the danger here, David.
Yes, it is, and that's why we've got to keep shouting loudly about this case. We've got to pursue justice for Hollie Greig and her wonderful, wonderful mother, Anne. I've never met them, but I've heard them on the radio and stuff, and I've never met Robert Greene. I keep meaning to have a chat with him. I'll do it shortly. But they are such wonderfully committed, genuine, solid people that we need to give them all the support that we can. But, if we go a little bit deeper on this, 20 years ago, when I started this journey, I learned very early on, through various means I talk about in a book that's at the printers at the moment, that there was a vibrational change coming. The title of the first book I wrote after I had my experiences 20 years ago was called Truth Vibrations. That's what I call these vibrations, this energetic change that is coming. And even though it's coming, it's just getting more powerful all the time. It's here. And what I was told, what I understood at that time, was that these truth vibrations were going to do two things. One, they were going to break up the density of people, and in effect, they were going to open their minds, and they were going to start to awaken to a much bigger understanding, both not of the world, but also of themselves, and who they are and what they really are, as opposed to what they see in the mirror. And the other thing that these truth vibrations were going to do, I was told then, is to bring to the surface all that's remained hidden. Now, 20 years ago, there was no evidence or sign of this whatsoever. But look now, Henrik. Look around the world now. There is an awakening going on. People are now in very, very large and increasingly large numbers looking at the world and themselves in a completely different light. And what has happened as this 20 years has unfolded? All that's remained hidden is coming to the surface. And that's really, really bad news for these people, because there is an energetic flow now, which they are trying to suppress, but they can't. They can't do it. And in the next few years, revelations of extraordinary kinds, both in relations to physics, the nature of reality, and what these people have been doing, are going to come to light more and more and more. And I've understood something in the last few years, which is so bloody obvious to me now. This Orwellian attempt to put the lid on humanity with the microchips to suppress us externally through the microchip, with the attempts to suppress freedom of speech, to control centrally all areas of life, to impose this Orwellian state with greater surveillance all the time. This is not actually primarily to gain more power. It's to hold on to the power they've had all along covertly, because they know that this vibrational change is coming, and they are desperately trying to mitigate its effects. And this is why the energetic change is happening and getting more powerful every day, exactly at the time that the suppression of human awareness and the suppression of human freedom, of thought, of movement, of freedom of speech, are all being attacked at the same time. They're trying to put the lid on the truth vibrations. And, you know, listen to me, guys. Listen, you're wasting your time, okay? It's just a matter of when your control system comes down and all your pedophile and satanic rings come to the surface more and more blatantly, and the characters involved that have been smiling at the camera, "We such a nice man," get exposed for what they really are. This is coming. It's happening. And the Hollie Greig case is a very, very powerful expression of it. Or we're in for some surprises and some shocks, but nothing like as many as those running the control system are in for.
That's a good point. And so you bring up the point here that you've been involved in about 20 years now in this kinds of research, and maybe we can, I guess, end a little bit on this point as well, David, in terms of what you think if you project ahead a little bit in 20 years. Are you positive or are you negative? Just as you say, obviously the fact is that for whatever reason, something is changing, and in one instance it feels like we're getting that for free. We're surfing an energy wave here, which is a good thing. At the same time, that doesn't mean that the work has to be done either. It has to be, as you pointed out, and as you've been doing now for 20 years, doing the groundwork and laying the infrastructure, as it were, for these things to fall into place and to connect the dots and so forth. But if we project about 20 years into the future, do you think we'll still be in a situation where everything is kind of slowly falling apart even more further as it is now, or have a alternative system, if we can put it that way, come into place, or maybe even the lack of a system at that point? What do you think, David?
20 years from now, control system gone. In the history books. Do you remember when it was like this and they thought they were going to do this? They didn't, did they? Because, you see, there are some people that think that the control system is all-powerful, and those running it are all-powerful, and those behind it who are of a non-human type are all-powerful. No, they're not. Yep. They're stupid. They're idiots. I mean, and they're frightened idiots as well, because anyone that wants to control to the scale that they want to control is suffering from massive extreme insecurity. And these people are. They're frightened. That's why when you run at them, like the Scottish bloody paedophile satanic ring, I mean, they scatter. They don't know what to do. Oh, my God, I want me mum. Yeah. And so they're not as powerful as they think they are, yeah. And they're not as powerful as so many people think they are. How they control humanity is this. They themselves are in a box, quite a small one, actually, because of their state of being. I want to control and all the rest of it. You're in a very small vibrational box of awareness, consciousness when you're in that mode. Really conscious people don't want to control anybody. So how have they controlled humanity? By putting humanity in a smaller box than they're in. And the bit in their bigger box that humanity doesn't have is an understanding of how reality works and how we interact with it, and quite a bit of technological know-how that allows manipulation to go on with technology that the population in general thinks is impossible. It's not impossible. It exists. It's just that you don't see it in the public arena. But when the humanity opens to the true magnitude of who we are, and that means breaking out of the programming, which is keeping us from that understanding and that potential, then we are in a bigger box than the control system's in. And eventually, if you open your mind to consciousness, to the extent that I'm talking about, you're not in a box at all. And then the control system comes down, because the control system is actually, I go into it in the new book, and it's 700 pages long nearly, so you can see that there are a lot of dots to connect before you can really put this together. But in the simplest terms, it's a construct. It's like someone's hacked in to the internet. It's like China, where people in China can't access through their computer system vast chunks of the internet that the rest of the world can, because they've been firewalled off. Humanity's been systematically firewalled off, and it's been done vibrationally and digitally. And when that is broken, and it's going to be broken, are you listening, control system? It is going to be broken. It's going to be like Sleeping Beauty waking up, because people in large, vast numbers are going to go, what's just happened? Where am I? What's gone on? What's been happening? Because the hack on the human collective mind is going to be unpicked. The lock's going to be unpicked. And we're going to go for a while as if the control system is moving on and it's unstoppable. However extreme it gets in the next few years, it ain't going to prevail. And at the same time, this process is going to go on of unpicking this lock, and it's not to do with protesting in the streets and all that stuff. This is just the way that it plays out. It's actually about very, very, very deep understanding of the true, not illusory, the true physics of what holds this reality and this hack together. And it's going to come down, and our children and grandchildren are not going to live in an Orwellian state. Quite the opposite. It's going to seem like that for a few years, but not too many years, by the way. But then it's going to become very clear that the system's coming down. And you rightly point out, Henrik, that it's not just about, oh, that David Icke says it's all coming down, so I'm going down the pub. No. These truth vibrations are a level of consciousness, a level of awareness, a greater level of awareness than we've had access to up to this point. But that awareness has to play out in this holographic world, this so-called physical world. It has to impact upon it. It has to play out. So it's not about going down the pub and saying, oh, it's all good. No, we are vehicles for expressing this new consciousness in what we call physical events. So the two are connected. And anyone who is truly awakening and accessing this emerging new awareness, last thing they want to do is run away from this and go down the pub or ignore it or say they've got no power. Anyone who says that is not tuning into this change. They're not. They're still in mind. They're still in I can't. They're still in I can't be bothered. And so the real changes of this society, this global society, we're going to bring the control system down, are those who are awakened to the point where they're tuning into this vibrational change, this information change, this awareness change, and expressing it out into the physical world as physical change.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more with you. It's not about escapism. It's about looking at things for what they really are, and that's true. Kind of, exposing someone, something, so to speak. In that sense, it's really about looking something for what it is, and not escape from the fact, so to speak. And I think it's very.
Come on, let's go.
Exactly.
My new book actually is called "Human Race, Get Off Your Knees," and the subtitle is "The Lion Sleeps No More." And the lion within us, the symbolic lion that don't mess with me, don't try to herd me, don't try to tell me what to think and what to do, because I'm not having it. And don't try to intimidate me. The lion within is not going to be intimidated by Peter bloody Watson sending his bloody threats out. And intimidation of these are the consequences if you don't do what the control system says.
Yeah.
Stick it, mate. Stick it. The lion within won't stand for that. And the lion within has to be the lion without. And it's starting to happen. but nothing like it's going to happen in the next few years. Come on, let's go. Enough. I've had a bellyful. It's our world. Let's take it back.
Yeah, I totally agree, David. Let's dig out the dirt and throw away what stinks. I mean, we don't need it anymore. The time of useless suffering is over in that sense. We don't need that anymore. I couldn't agree more with you. Obviously, davidicke.com is the website to not only find out more information about the new book, and we'd love to have you back, David, at some point and go into the nitty-gritty, some of the aspects of your new book, of course, that we didn't have time to talk about today.
Some of them are quite interesting. I mean, yes, some people will find that quite, he said what? But
new stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to do that, Henrik, maybe in April time.
Absolutely. Let's have you back, David, and talk about the new book then. And in the meantime, for all of you guys who want to either pre-order, read more about it, again, davidicke.com is the website. Keep up the great work, David. Let's dig out what stinks. And
you too, Henrik. You do a great job, mate.
You too. Thanks, David. We'll talk more later.
Cheers, Henrik. See you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Up and onwards. Thanks to David for his time, efforts, and tireless research on these troubling but essential areas. We'll be back with much more radio soon. John Hall, Sonia Barrett, William H. Kennedy, Lucas, Klaus Schmidt, Graham Hancock, Stephen Bassett are some of the names that we got upcoming for you. And heads up on our 2 Red Eyes TV shows as well. Episode 3 on Illuminati symbolism in movies, and Episode 4 on occult symbols in corporate logos. So good stuff is coming up. My thanks to Fredrik, Elizabeth, and Lana, and of course to you for listening. If you like what we do, sign up for a membership. We will talk more soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Red Eyes Radio, media for the forefront.